Okay, now I'm gonna test uh, using. I don't really think about curling my wrist, but I'm gonna try doing that a lot now, and I'm gonna try doing it in a way I've seen Anthony Barela do it, where while he's coiling, he curls his wrist in to keep the disc and the elbow bent towards his chest while he's coiling. Then, as he's reaching back, he uncurls his wrist and then curls it again on the way in. And I like that timing because it gives you like a nice rhythm to try curling the wrist instead of just trying to like force it to happen in a certain place. Also, I've tried it a few times before, and when you uncurl the wrist, it seems like it wants to kind of bounce back into the curled position kind of faster and more easily. So I'm going to see if this increases my spin, helps me throw with a faster speed than normal, and I'm going to use my normal grip alignment with it. Also, I'm going to be turning the key a little bit and using a controlled walk up with an X step. Compared to the other tests, I was doing everything with a one leg standstill to try to keep as many things consistent as possible. But with this test, I'm mostly concerned about spin and speed, so I want to see with my X step how the speed compares to my normal X step, which is if I'm not running, if I'm doing a walk up, my normal high speeds are in the low 60s, and when I do a full run up, it gets to like 65 and then a little bit above for my absolute max. My default hyzer angle is usually closer to 20 degrees, so it's a bit lower in this session, but I attribute that to some recent form practice where I'm trying to stay more balanced over my X step instead of exaggerating nose over toes too much and being in kind of like a slow fall over my toes. So I just haven't kind of reconciled these two things to get the same amount of hyzer while maintaining a better balance. So I hit 60 miles per hour with less effort, it felt like, and 1300 spin, which I think I've only done once or twice, even up to 60, like 7 miles per hour. So far it's seems to be promising. I'm gonna really focus on the curl into the pocket this time. Try to really exaggerate it. I don't think I'm getting it as much as I should be. Alright, so here's a stats comparison. I grabbed some old throws that were around the same speed, but it doesn't matter that much because we're looking at this ADV ratio, which Tech Disc derives from comparing the speed and the spin. I don't know exactly how they do it, but apparently I've heard somewhere somebody say that above 50 is quite good. Um, so you can see my older throws were all below 50, and then most of these throws with the wrist curling were above 50, which was an increase of 16% if I average the two ADV ratio lists of percentages and compare to those. So that I think that's pretty significant. I think aside from having a strong grip and not opening your hand to release the disc, the other thing that
will have a big impact potentially on spin would be adding more wrist action like this, because it just gives a lot more like rotational pop at the end. Here are some stats available to anybody to look at on TechDisk's website of different pros. Unfortunately, there's not many throws, so it's hard to see patterns. And for some reason, they don't show the ADV ratio on every view of the stats. But if I had to guess, for example, on Gannon's throw at the very top, that'd probably be in the low to mid 50s for ADV ratio. Also, it seems like from the limited data I've seen that at a certain point, the spin has a hard time continuing to scale with further increases in speed. So it's kind of often that you'll see pros who have high spin, and then as their speed increases, the spin doesn't always continue to increase as the speed increases beyond a certain point. I asked Gannon why he thinks he gets more spin than a lot of pros, and he said he thinks it's because he has good control of his wrist curl as he's coming out of the power pocket, but he also does have some of the longest levers in the game. I tried this style of wrist curl that I tested in this video here while playing around on the course, and it definitely felt like a more advanced technique that's more difficult to control. Initially, I was having a harder time with accuracy and angle control, but as the round went on, I started to improve and feel more comfortable with it. So I chose the AB style to test here because I felt like the timing of curling, uncurling, and curling would help me implement it more easily rather than just trying to kind of insert it at the last moment as you come out of the power pocket. However, it does feel like a lot of extra moving parts when in reality you should only need the wrist curl at the last moment if you want to add some spin and some extra speed perhaps. So I do also want to test it that way, which is what it looks to me like Gannon is doing. I don't see his wrist moving very much until that last moment, then it curls in, and there's a natural force as you're coming out of the power pocket for the wrist to curl in if it's a little bit relaxed, whereas trying to curl the wrist as you come into the power pocket kind of feels like you're fighting against the weight and the momentum of the disc, and you don't really need to curl it at that moment.